Welcome back to our report design framework. We're going a bit deeper about building reports and wireframes and how do we stitch all this together. Our whole course has been around looking at a framework, how to communicate to business users what you'll be building. Now, this is a lot more of the tactical piece of building the actual pieces and components. You take it away.
Exactly. So in this video, we're going to look at how to build awesome layouts in tools such as Figma. Then we're actually going to see how to translate these layouts using tools like the theme editor into our Power BI files, really in a reusable way that we can expand and change very easily. So to recap, if you haven't seen the last two videos, we spoke about how to get to this stage, going through this design flow map, designing a page layout, and looking at the visuals on the page. If you haven't seen that video, don't worry. You can still follow along and you can watch that later. But today, we're going to be focusing in this bottom left-hand corner. Now that we've designed our layout and now that we have our report map, we're going to look at how to design these scrims, make our reports look like those polished professional ones that you see online. So, how do we do this? How do we get these beautiful reports, these wonderful reports that you see out there? Now, you may have heard of a tool called Figma. We're going to today build a couple of things in Figma. If you've never used it before, don't worry. It's going to be a crash course here. Figma's got a free version you can go and download, and you'll see the links in the comments. But that's what the tool we're using today. So I'm going to switch over to my Figma, and we're going to go straight into it. So I've opened up my Figma. By this point, we understand what our report's going to look like. We have an idea of where to lay out our visuals on the page. What I want to do today is give you a very quick, we're going to speed through it at some tips and tricks on what to do in Figma, a couple of cool things, and how to start building these fantastic layouts. Then Mike's going to take over. He's going to take one of the layouts I build. He's going to put this through a theme generator and make sure that we can change this theme back into a nice Power BI report. Awesome. Welcome to Figma. If you've never seen it before, I know I'm going to run through quick. You'll be able to watch this on repeat. Lots of good sites that will point you as well to go and learn a bit more deeper. I want to give you my top 5 or 6 tips and tricks on things you can do to make sure we can build these beautiful reports. So what we're going to be doing is, as you saw at the beginning, we're going to be designing these layout files. So these are background images. These are images, PNG images, for example, we save these as, that go to the background of a report. What they do is they give us nice areas and tell us exactly where we can lay out our visuals. By designing these first and then using theme generator to place the visuals, it makes our life so much easier as report developers because we don't have to go through on trying to lay things out on a blank canvas, which can be quite intimidating in Power BI. So we want to get from our basics and to create these lovely looking background images that we'll see how we implement these into our reports. So the first thing I'm going to do is when I look into Figma, I always think about my color styles. When we're talking about themes, and we'll go into the theme generator, we generally want to reuse the same colors. We want to have the same colors. We want to pick some colors and re-have them throughout our reports, right? For consistency, we might align them to some sort of branding. We might want to just have our official company colors. So in Figma, we can do a couple of things. If you notice on the right, we have something called local styles. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add here into a local style, and you can see that I'm going to be able to pick color. So I just clicked on the plus, I'm going to pick a color. Now I'm going to call this my main color. You probably want to give it a better name, but I'm going to call it my main color number 1. And then I'm just going to pick here, and I'm going to say I want to pick a nice kind of purpley color. Normally, we would probably have the hex codes or the codes to have these colors. We'd want to try and get these colors in advance. Maybe we talk with our marketing department, our teams, whoever you're making reports for, And we're going to think, what are our main colors that we want consistently throughout the reports, not only in this branding and their backgrounds, but also we can reuse these colors, you'll see with the theme generator, actually in the visuals themselves. So the colors are going to be very reusable, so we get a nice consistency. I'm going to be choosing some quite bright and bold colors here. It's just going to make it a lot easier for us to see, but don't always have to have these crazy colors. So I've got my first color, and I can call it my main color. So you can see over here, it's now added my color to my color style. Let me add a couple more. And I'm moving my second color. And I'm going to pick this maybe more of an orangey kind of bright. Again, nice and bold colors so that it really sticks out to us. And I'll just have my third one. Great for descriptions in here, kind of their uses, all of that. Obviously, do that when you have a bit more time and we're not going a demo. Always add descriptions, I think, on everything. So I've got my 3 colors here now. What I can do in Figma is on my top left, I have a few options I can add. And I'm going to be pressing this one, which is going to add a shape. I just want to add, just imagine like it's PowerPoint, a rectangle, right? If you can drop down, pick a rectangle or a circle, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to draw this rectangle. Now, by clicking on here, I can see I have my fill color. So I'm going to take away this fill color, and you'll see it's now see-through. And if I click this 4 little dots, I'm now going to get access to see my colors that I picked earlier. We'll see why this is useful. So I'm just going to click this purple one, right? And I just do this so I know what my colors are, and it's a nice way to view. You'll notice me doing this quite a lot in Figma, and I'm going to be holding Alt. So right now, I'm going to be holding the Alt key. And if I hold Alt and I drag my block here, my rectangle, it's just going to make a copy. So Alt and drag, and I'm going to make a couple of copies. And just to test this out, right, let me take away this fill. Let me do my second color here, take away this fill, and do my third color. Normally, I might put this into put this over here. So this is just a reference for me. I can see my colors, right? And we can see, instead of me having to pick that color, instead of me having to go to the hex code, I can just choose my reusable color. We're going to be looking at how to make things reusable here. It's all about reusability. And we'll see that what this means is that we can create many, many pages very quickly. Plus, if we ever want to change a color, or maybe we have different reporting requirements, we can just take this file, change the colors, change our logos, that kind of stuff, and we have a whole new set of backgrounds. So that is it. With nothing selected, my color styles here, I can add my local styles. That is number 1. These styles reusable, so everything points to this main style. Anytime I want to edit, I can just go here and I can actually change this, and you'll see here that anything using this style, if I had multiple squares, for example, using the same style, everything would change. So when I change my main one, I can change this and it will change all of my assets everywhere.
And I want to make clear, as you're building lots of reports and potentially making many different pages of things, I can't undervalue the idea of being able to think in a reusable way. Again, everything we've been doing in this series is thinking about how can you reuse content or assets or objects that are designed in a smart way. Steve's just scratching the surface on this one, and we'll probably have to follow up with some more videos about other elements around Figma that are incredibly important here. But this is a fundamental feature of why I love Figma. This is so powerful when you see this.
Yeah. And today we're going to go very quickly through quite a lot. As Mike said, we'll look to follow up with some more deep dives into each of the specific areas. The idea here is we want to show you the top kind of 5 things on why we like Figma. Really quickly go through them. So if you miss them, if you forget exactly what I'm doing, you'll rewatch the video, but don't worry, we'll have some more deep dives in the future. So here are my colors. The second element, so number 1, are styles. We call them styles, and we'll see there's other things we can do, and we'll show that a bit later. Styles, number one, reusable. Number two is what we call frames. Now you could see before, when I went to my top left, if I clicked this button here, I could just enter a shape. Just like PowerPoint, just like Word, you're entering a shape onto a canvas. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click this hash symbol. And this is called a frame. See here, if you do the drop down, there's a couple of things you can do. But what I want to do, so I zoom in, is add a frame. So as selected, I'm just going to draw a square here. And you'll notice when I have this frame, what this is a kind of a section, and we'll show with some demos on how to use these frames, and we'll go into a couple of different options we can do. But once I have any item selected, so when I had nothing selected, right, this is my page view, and this is where I can see the styles. Clicking on my frame here, it brings up the options on the right. And we can see kind of the X, Ys, and there's a few things down here, which we'll get into later, don't worry. But the ones I'm really interested, width and height. So this is a good way, as you can see, if I resize this, it's going to change the width and height, just like many other options in other programs. What I want to do is I want to match this to my Power BI page, and this frame is going to be my main background that I'll use across pages. So a standard size in Power BI, the standard page size, is 1280 by 720. In pixels, this is just a standard screen size. It's what the default for Power BI is, the size of the canvas. So that's what I'm going to make my frame, because that way it's going to fit really well. So I'm just going to click on the W. I'm going to click 1280. I'm going to click into the height, and I'm going to write 720. See here? I've just clicked in, and I've typed 1280 by 720. Yeah, it's made my frame. Lovely. So now I've just got a white square. This is my building base. It's called frame one, which isn't very helpful. So I'm just going to double click here, and I'm going to call this background. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to make this into a component. So moving very quick here, we are doing something reusable, right? And we're reusing things. This is all about reusability. What I'm going to do with my frame is, just for now, let me give it this main color one. This isn't going to be the background, but just so we can see what's happening, I'm going to make it purple here. So the third big button that we care about is right up here in the middle, and it's this diamond button. This is called components. Components are the essence of reusability. It turns what I have into a reusable asset. So if I click on this, watch the background text here. So I click, and you'll see it's changed now to it's put these purple with filled in diamonds, and it's changed the title to background. This means that this is now what we call a component. So what is a component? If I go over here, you'll notice that everything I build, I have is on the left in this layers section. And this is just everything, right? So I have another rectangle actually, but I have these three rectangles here, which are my rectangles. I have another one out of sight because I want to use it later. And then I have this background component, and it's this background component here, right? So this is just my layers, just like the selection pane in Power BI. This is showing me everything on my screen, on my canvas. I also have this assets. So I'm going to click on the assets, right? So I went from layers, I clicked on assets, and now it says all my local components. And local, because we're working locally, you can actually share stuff with Figma across teams. Lots of cool stuff. We're not going to get into that. In the background, I can see I made this one a component here. Now it's added it to my local components. What I can do is I can just drag this out and place it on the screen. And I get a copy, right? So I'm just going to drag a couple. Now, these are all instances of my component. So they're just, this is my main component because this is the component I created. These are just copies of my component. And you'll see this in the layers. See my main component here has the component symbol, and then it has this hollowed out symbol to show these are instances of that component. What I can do now, reusability, if I go back to my main component and say this is a silly color, I can change this color to the blue. Because all my instances are now linked to this main component, everything changes. So when we set this out, we're probably going to be building quite a few pages. We can instantly create and change how the background works across everything. I'm actually just going to give this though a fill, and I'm just going to give this a white color. Let's give it a little bit of gray now. We can probably change this later. Just so it's obvious. We'll do this just for now so we can see it and it stands out.
I'm going to pop in here 1 second. I'm going to challenge you just a little bit, Steve. I love this idea of using the component for the pages. I do this all the time. But let's build, like, can you build, this may be a little bit advanced, but I'm saying one thing we can't do very well in Power BI Desktop is add a gradient to a color. Would you be able to take that background color? So you made a fill for that main component. Can you go into that fill, Steve, and can you adjust that fill to make it a little bit of a gradient? So like thinking like the upper left-hand corner maybe is a little bit light, maybe the bottom one's a little bit darker, because that's a feature we can't actually build today in desktop.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, great idea. I think, this sounds like I might want to reuse this. So I'm going to make a local style.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So clicking off everything,
yeah,
I'm going to add a local style here. And I'm going to add a color style.
Love it.
And clicking on the color, you'll notice here I have a couple of options. I can have a solid color, and this one, which is a gradient. I can actually put an image if I want with a picture. But Mike says he wants a gradient.
Yes, please.
So I agree with Mike. So we can have our gradients, right? Just like if you're used to using PowerPoint, anything, you have different options and gradients, how they radial or linear. Quite like a linear, right? And it goes top to bottom. You can see the gradient. So the first color, I'm going to have a nice, probably lighter gray. And then I might just do a very slight tint of blue as it goes down. I'm going to change this to 100% so we can see it. And if I do this, click off, so I've got my top color is gray, my bottom color is a white with a very tight light hint of blue. And then I'm just going to create this style. Oops, and I should name my style. So gradient background. You think of better names when you do it yourself. Now I go to my background. I'm going to take off my color. And then again, if I want to access the styles, I'm pressing these 4 dots. So whenever you add a color, this is just to add a static color. This one's always thinking of the styles. And here we go. Here's my nice gradient. Lovely. I might rearrange this and work on it a bit when I have more time, but you can see here, see the gradient. And you know what? I'm going to edit it a bit. If you ever want to edit a style, you just hover over the style and you have a nice edit color here. Editing this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it very bold. And that's really because I know we're all watching. Oops, I've added another color. Just so it's a bit easier for you to see if you're watching this on YouTube, because I know it can get a bit light.
This is, so I can't stress enough how important it is to make styles of things that are reusable. And then this is where I think Figma really shines, is we can take patterns of things we want to use, solid colors, gradient colors, angles of colors, like all this kind of, there's just so many things that are reusable here. This is why this is, like, in my opinion, the best tool to use for visual design.
Definitely. So I'm just going to delete these backgrounds because I don't want them. That's just a demo. So right now we've got our styles here, which are our colors. I could probably add one and just show our gradient as well, because that's also a style, right? And I like this. This is just for me, so I know what colors. I could just look over here, but it's also easy just to have these squares. It's very obvious when I'm looking at this. I have now one component, my background. I'm going to make another component, for my visuals. So typically, I have a couple of elements. I'll have this background, which is this nice gradient here. I know it's very bold. Then I'll have areas for my visuals, right? So I know where to put my visuals on the page. Same thing, I'm going to make a component for that. To do that, I'm going to click on the frame again and add a new frame. This one, I don't mind too much about the colors. Or the size, I'm going to leave it. But I'm just going to give it a little style. So I'm going to round the corners a bit here. And you can see in the options, you have an options for, for rounding the corners. I'm just going to, just to make this obvious, I'm going to put this in a bit of a dark color. It's probably not going to be the nicest looking, but I want to show it to you so there's contrast so that you can see easy. I'm going to put my rounded corners at about 20. And what I'm going to do is I can add an effect down here. And I'll have a drop shadow. And I'm going to change my drop shadow. And again, you can play around with the shadowings and all of this, the formatting. But you can see here a nice frame, and this is what my visuals will go on. And we'll see how that works. Click on it. I'm going to rename it to visuals. And I'm going to make this a component. So my background component, my visuals component. Last thing I'm going to do is add a new frame, and I'm going to have this one as KPIs. Because I like my KPIs, sometimes I might want them to look a bit different than my main visuals. I'm going to call this KPIs. I'm going to match the 20 rounded corners so it looks consistent. What I'm going to do in this one is let me add the color. And again, you should probably use one of your styles here. So let me actually do that. Let me just add my styles. It's going to be very bright, this KPI. In fact, we wouldn't normally set this up as a style. Just for contrast, I'm going to pick a color. What I'm going to do on the KPI is I'm going to add a stroke. And a little trick is I've got my rounded corners at 20. I'm going to match my stroke width. And you'll see what the stroke is. It's this kind of border, essentially. The cool thing is, you ever see this symbol? It lets you switch which sides the border is. So right now the border is on all sides. I can say I just want my border at the top. Because I've matched the border width to the rounded corners, it gives this really nice effect, I think, where you can see, a nice pop out. You see this quite a lot in reporting. Last thing to do is make this a component. Now I have 3 components, my visuals, my background, and my KPIs. Now we're going to start building some pages. We're going to get a bit advanced here, don't worry, but we just want to kind of show you some tips and tricks and the magic of Figma and why we think you should be using it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add a frame. And you always have to add a frame because this is going to be the frame and everything that's in this frame is going to be exported. So I'm going to draw a frame here. I'm going to change the width to 1280 and then the height to 720. And I'm going to call this page 1. What I'm going to do is you can see on my left, I have the layers, right? I have page 1 here. This is what I'm working on. You can see it's a frame. If I click on the assets button, you can see here are my 3 components. I'm going to drag in background. I'm just going to drag it in and position it, and it snaps and auto knows. So now I have my frame, page 1. And within my frame, you can see I put my background. You can see this is a copy of the main component. My main components always live over there on their own. Now here comes some really cool magic. Within page 1, I'm going to add another frame. You can think of these frames as kind of building blocks. I'm just going to draw it here in the middle. And I'm going to add some KPIs. And this is going to be my KPI row. So within my frame, it's a frame within a frame. I'm going to drag the KPI. So now you can kind of see, and I might rename this frame, KPIs. Call it KPIs frame. You can see here, I have my page 1 frame, which is, just think of these frames as the skeleton the frameworks. Within my page 1, I have the background, and then I also have another frame which holds my KPIs, and at the moment it's got a copy of the KPI instance. This is going to get technical and we're going to go really quick. So don't worry if it goes over your head. Have a couple of rewatches and we'll do a deep dive. The beauty about Figma, and this is why, more of a showing you why we want to use it. Once I click on this KPIs frame, I'm going to add over here, there's a button called Auto Layout. Now, Auto Layout is fantastically powerful in Figma. Once I add an auto layout, we'll see how to configure it. It's now going to change things. I've added now an auto layout to my KPIs frame. Clicking now on my KPIs component, so the KPI image, I'm going to change how it sits in this frame. Because I have an auto layout, it now lets me say, do you want it to be a fixed width or do you want it to fill the container? And the container in this instance is that frame. So I'm going to call it to fill the container and fill the container. So now if I click on the frame, if I resize this frame, it always fills this container. Okay, I could have just resized this, so what's the point? What it does is I am going to put this over on a page over here, and I'm going to align it like this. Now with my auto layout, I can change, this is padding. So this is padding left and right, top to bottom, and then between elements we'll see. I'm going to add some padding left, top and bottom. You can see here as I add the padding. And what I'm doing, by the way, is if you just click and drag left and right, it just it does the numbers, or you can type them in. So now that I've got all my padding adjusted and I can see it fits nicely within this frame, the magic of auto layout, aside from just adjusting the padding, because I now have my KPI set to fill the container, so it fills the container adjusting to the padding, what I can do is if I click, so I've clicked in my KPIs frame, I've clicked on that KPI element, which is that instance, right? That copy of the component. I'm just going to press Control C and Control V. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste in another KPI element. This is the magic of auto frame. You'll see what's happened here is that within my KPIs frame, I have these two instances of my KPIs. Because I have on my KPI frame an auto layout, and I have these set to fill the container, it's going to fill the container bearing in mind how many elements we have. So because I have two, now they're filling half the container each. If I do this again, click on my KPI, Control V, Control CV, you can see now that this autofill is just auto-filling up with the amount of elements I have in. You can see here, I can change the direction of the layout too. So right now it's going down, and you can see this because it's 1, 2, 3 going down. I can change this to left to right, which doesn't really look very good. Obviously, I probably want them going down. So here, I'm going to have them going down. This is really, really great, and we'll see how we can use this to produce some really quick and fantastic stuff. Now I've got my KPI bars, so I can have 3, maybe I want 4 actually. I'm going to say here, let me adjust now. You'll see this third padding option, which is the vertical gap between items. You'll see this is adjusting the gaps between my items here. Right? And so now, as well as the left and right, the top and bottom, it's how much gap do I want between the elements. So I'm just going to give them a bit of space here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another frame to the main part of my image here. And I'm going to go to my assets again. And now this is going to be my visuals. So I'm going to place my visuals. It's easier to see in this layers view over to the left. And I'm going to name this visuals. Nice and easy. I'm going to set my component in the visual. Actually, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an auto layout on my visuals frame. So on my auto layout, I create the auto layout on the frame. And then the visual element inside it, I'm going to say, let me fill this to the container. And I want to fill the container. Oh, I've got a very large padding here for some reason. I think I adjusted it accidentally. Padding 1010, right? You can see again, this works just the same with my visuals. Because I have my auto layout, sometimes what I like to do is I might make Control C. And again, I have to be careful to click on the visual element I can paste as many in here. I can change the direction that they look. For example, I can go left to right. Here I just want 2. And then I might have a third frame, do the same thing. I add in my frame for the bottom half, bring in an asset, bring in the visual. On the frame itself, I'm going to call this visuals 2, because it's my second set of visuals. Add my auto layout, and I'm going to get my visual element. I'm going to say fill the container. So fill this frame, and I'm going to put it in the bottom right. So now I have a page layout. The beauty of auto layout is if I want to make page 2, what I can do is I can just hold Alt again. So Alt, remember Alt and drag to copy. I'm going to drag to page 2. And it's worked out that I want page 2 and it's automatically named it for me. Here, right, I might change how I want. So I might just have page 2 and I might just have the single big visual here. And you can see how quickly I can just make new pages. With my auto layout, I might only want 3 KPIs. Very quickly, easily done. And you can see page 3. You can imagine, let me just paste some more visual in so I can split it up like this. Maybe I want this KPIs a bit differently. You can see here very quickly that I can drag and drop, copy over. With this auto layout, I can really easily just Control C and Control V, add more elements into my page as I want. And that makes a lot of sense.
Now, Steve, I love this. This is great. We've made a number of pages. We have a style that is congruent between all pages. What if I don't like that black bar at the top of my visuals? How would I change the black bar on top of my KPI visuals? Is there an easy way, Steve, that I could go back and modify all of them together?
Exactly. Yeah, and I agree with you, Mike. I don't like the black bar. And I think, to be honest, that background, everything's a bit. I made it very bold and obvious so that we can see what's happening.
Totally.
I might want to change this down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of these, remember, we dragged from the assets. So, Mike, I know you want to change this black bar. Now, you don't want to go through and do this, how many is it? 10, 11 times.
I've been there. I've done that. Too long. Took too long.
Everything's linked back to this main KPIs component. So remember, this is our main component, right? These filled in. These ones, and we can see here, these are linked to the main component because they have diamonds without the filled in. So they're all linked to this main one. Now, Mike, if you don't like the stroke, that's fine. What we can simply do is just take the stroke off and boom, all the elements are linked up.
Nice.
I might change this color a bit, right, and make it
do like a frosty white when the frosty white is like a white with a little bit of transparency. That's so hot right now. Everyone's loving that frosty whiteness.
And here you can just change the transparency.
Look, there it goes. Look at that.
And this is how you see, sometimes you see these really cool futuristic ones. These transparency adds that nice futuristic view, and they often have a bold background. What I'm going to do though, I want quite a professional one. I might change instead. Actually, I don't want my rounded corners. It's going to have everything square, right? Nice and square. In my KPIs, I might say, hey, I want these touching with each other. So I can just go to this frame and I can change the width between from 20 to 0. Now, what I can do is sometimes I might want my specific instances of the KPIs to be a different color.
Yes.
I don't have to set up a component each time. I can override. So, for instance, if I click on this KPI, I say, I don't want to use this color. I'm going to use my main pink here. I'll use my second color. And again, I'm clicking the 4 dots. So I'm taking off the color and I'm clicking these 4 dots because I'm using one of those styles that I set up earlier. I only have 3 here.
Yeah.
So I can easily overwrite each individual one. It still follows kind of our main KPIs. I can still apply the styling. So if I put in back my random corners, right, it's still there. What I've done is I've overwritten this specific element, right? So this one KPI, rather than everything, I'm not going to have 30 components because that defies the point. So I can easily make differences between the individual ones that I wanted to do.
Love it.
So now what I'll do is I might just style out my page a bit. I might just, I like to just have one big visual here with my 4 KPIs on the left. I might style down a little bit on my background. So again, of course, this goes all the way back to my style. So my background gradient style here, I can just edit this style at any time as well. So instead of it being so bold, I might just lighten the color a little bit and lighten this blue as well. And lighten this up. So it has a nice subtle gradient here. And you can see, and then maybe I'll just switch my visual, make this just pure white or a little bit of gray with a nice frosty tint as Mike likes.
There you go.
So there you can see how quickly we just changed that style of all the pages on all the reports, all linked to the same thing. I often have this, with 20, 30 pages with all the different layouts that I might need.
Yeah. It's going to be quite cumbersome if you're trying to build this, especially if you're building things in like PowerPoint. PowerPoint doesn't really give you this capability. Yes, you could build visuals with PowerPoint and, you have the ability of having a page and putting objects on the page. But if you make a change on page one, it doesn't necessarily propagate to all pages. And this is a great way of thinking about how you propagate those changes across all pages of your report so everything looks consistent. This is all about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And me as a consultant, I might take this to different companies. Maybe you have different departments. I often just set this up as a nice base file. I'll open it up. They say, oh, these colors are my company colors or my department. You can really easily just change everything in one place, switch it over.
With that, I think we'll jump in. So let's assume that right now you've made all your visual styles and you're now going to want to incorporate them inside your report. But instead of going to desktop, we'll go into themes.PowerBI.tips and we'll show you how to build that now. Let's turn on my desktop. So let's imagine for a moment here, you have all of your scrims that have been created. We'll step ahead there and go ahead, Steve. I'll leave your camera on in case we get the audio back. So let me know and we'll maybe jump back in there. Steve has done his amazing work here on how to build out the different individual scrims. So these are what we're calling background images. And so when you're done with that, when you're completed inside the Figma program, you can actually export all the images. And so as you export all your images as Figma frames, you'll be able to produce these really nice images. And this is a Figma design file that I built. I went through and I even laid out some elements here. So these are all images that are created. And actually, I created these as an SVG image. And what you can see is, since I'm using an SVG, it scales very nice, very large and very small, and it's very crisp and clear. This is one of the images that we produced. And this image has markings on it. It basically indicates to me where the different edges of the different visuals or elements or data elements are on the background image, the scrim. So great, we have images. Now I can go over to Power BI Desktop and build them all. But hold on a second here. We have built a tool for you that makes this incredibly easy and much faster to build. So once you've collected all your images or your items together, you can quickly build these into a report without even using data. So in order to do that, you'll navigate on over to themes.PowerBI.tips. And so you may have used this to build theme files in your on the web before for your reports. But you'll notice we've added a new feature here. And so we're actually going to wireframe, bring together all the different data elements of these background images and pull them together into a complete report. So if you go over here to the section called wireframes inside this website, when you click on wireframes, it'll take you to a new page. This page allows you to see the full build of a report. So over here on the left-hand side, I'll quickly walk through navigation. You have over here on the left-hand side, you have a list of report pages. If you want to expand or look into or explode that one page and actually build visuals on the page, you'll click this icon here. If you want to duplicate it, you'll click the duplicate icon. You can hide a page, add visuals, and delete the page. You can also click on the name and adjust the name of the page. So building a report page or building a wireframe is as easy as clicking additional buttons. I've added a couple pages. I can click on the page itself, and I can click on the color area in the right-hand side here. And then in the same way you would design in desktop, we can quickly change the background color of that page. There are also other functionalities of these pages that also fit. You can change the page view to fit to page. These are settings that are in Power BI Desktop. You could also do fit to width or size the page for actual size. These are how the page will render inside Power BI Desktop. Additionally, you can hide a page. So if you click the hidden button here, you can hide the page, and you'll notice when I do that, the little eye of the hidden eye icon shows up next to the page, meaning that this page is no longer going to be shown in the report, but is a hidden page. We also have things here that can change the size, the aspect ratio of this report page. You can also dial in the width and the height of the page, as well as we can change the background color and upload our own images. So this is what we're going to focus on. We've already built the images. They're already clean and ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload our images and build the report here. So let me delete these extra pages. And as I remove these pages, I'll have my single page here. I'm going to go upload my image. I'll go into my desktop, and I will go grab the background image that we had earlier. So I'll bring my main dimensions right into my report. And with that, I'll see that I have my image automatically added to the page of the report. I'm going to adjust the settings down here. So I will make the image fit. So you have the normal option or other sizing options. I'm going to make it, instead of being normal, I'm going to make it fit. That means the image will stretch all the way out to the edges of the report pages. Now, you'll also notice here the image that I uploaded was an SVG file. This is because we like that file to be very crisp, and we want the image to be very clear. You can use JPEGs or PNGs as well if you need a transparent background, but we recommend using an SVG file because it saves space and it makes a very efficient and very clean and clear looking report when you're done. With that being done now, we already have our page built. So this will be our template page. So I'm just going to rename it template here on the page name. And then if I click on this item here for add visuals or double click on the visual itself, it will then explode the page and make it much larger. So the idea now is we've transitioned away from adding background images and adding pages. We are now able to transition into actually adding visuals on top of this page. So what we'll do now is we'll add a card visual, and then we can drag this card visual around. I can move it with my cursor. I can resize it here in the bottom left-hand corner, or we can make the card visual any size that we want. So I can take my card visual and sneak it here on the page. Additionally, if I want to continue to adjust that size of the card visual, when I highlight the card visual, I have all the settings of it here on the right-hand side. So I can immediately adjust this so it matches the dimensions on my report page. So what I'll do here now is go in here. Actually, I think I want this on fill. But I think I'll make it a fill. Okay, that should take up the whole page. Now what I'll do is I'll click on the visual, and then I can then position the direction. So I know the upper left-hand corner is at 60 pixels and 60 pixels. So I can just type in 60, 60, and it automatically moves the visual to the right place on the page. We also know the width is noted on the page as well, 190 by 150. And now I've got the full visual laid out on top of that object. Now I may want to, on this visual, I may want to change the background. I may not want a background color on this one. So actually on this card visual, I'll remove the background and leave it just as is. So now we can then duplicate this visual multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now I can then drag the visuals around, and you'll notice as I drag the visuals, there's automatically alignment options occurring for me on each of the visuals. So I will align this visual right next to the other object here. And you'll notice there is alignment on the edges and or the centers of other visuals. So what we can do here is this tool actually gives you the ability to snap to center and snap to edges. For now, I want the edges to align. So I'm actually going to turn off the option for snapping to centers. And then when I move the visual around, you'll see that it'll only snap to the edges of the visual above it, which is exactly what I want. I want to be able to align all my visuals and snap to the various edges of my report here. So I'm snapping all my visuals in, and there we go. So I've got all my visuals aligned on the left-hand side. Next, I will be able to add any other visuals to the main portion of the page here. So I maybe add a scatter chart, and then I will align that here to the top of the page. So I can just snap it here and it'll align directly to the top. And then I can adjust the position of it as well. So I know that the X position of that visual should start at 290. So we'll go over here, we'll start it at 290. And then we know the full width of the visual is 930. So I will do the full width at 930 as well. That produces another visual on the page. And again, I will go into the visual and we'll turn off the background color, get rid of that. And then also we may want some other card visuals or a table on the page as well. So I'll bring a table in here. We'll align a table to the page. We'll snap it in there as well, and I'll expand this a little bit so we get a little bit more width there. Let's turn off the background of that visual as well. And maybe we want another visual in here. We'll put our donut chart, and then we'll align our donut chart on the page as well. Now, all these visuals are touching, and we may not actually want that when we're building this in our report. So what we may want to do is we may want to move these visuals down. So in order to do that, you can actually use a nudging feature. So if I click on this visual, you'll notice here under the information button here, we have a couple of shortcut keys. You can move the entire visual by 10 or 50 pixels by using Shift and the arrow keys or Alt and the arrow keys. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this pie chart or the donut chart. I'm going to use Alt and down arrow. And what it will do is it'll shift this visual down 50 pixels. And then I can just realign the visual again and have it resnap here. I'll give it another border or another gap on this right-hand side. So I have a little edge between each of the visuals. Again, I'll highlight the visual. I'll hit Alt and the right key. I'll move the visual over so it snaps on the edge. And then I'll move the visual right back to where it was. So Alt and go back. So now I have this nice little bordered edge. And because you can't see the individual borders here, I'll turn the backgrounds on just very briefly here so you can see that I'm building this nice border between the two different visuals. Same thing here with this visual. I'll go Shift or Alt down arrow. I'll bring my visual back up to the corner here, snap it back in, and now I've got another 50 pixels there as well. So with that, I've got all my visuals aligned on the page. I have this sample page or this template page done and completed. Once I'm happy with everything and how it's all built here, I will zoom out of this page, and I'll see I have my template page now created and built here. So the next thing what I'll do is I'll be able to duplicate this page and actually swap out the background image. So what I'll do now is I'll grab the background image here. I'll just duplicate the page, and that will then duplicate the page here on the background, and it will basically copy the page over, and I'll see the exact same thing. So now I will turn the page on. This will now be my overview page. So I'm going to call it overview. And then once we have the overview page created, I'll be able to go into clicking the page, going over to the options here, I will remove the background image, and we will now upload a new image. So now instead of using our fully numbered background to tell us where everything lives, we'll now focus on the left-hand side here of the visual that only has the colors on it. So I will load this other image. We'll open that up. And now we've removed all the objects. And so now when I go into this report visual or this page, I can see all my visuals are still aligned exactly where they need to be, right on the page, and I'm ready to begin building more pages. So with that, I could quickly build n number of more additional pages, highlighting all the data pieces or elements without even adding new visuals. It's already got the framework or the design already designed and laid out for me. So with that, I can zoom out here and just show you how easy it is to add additional pages. I can then copy this page multiple times. I'll do another copy here. So this will be page 1, and this will be the top color in the list. So we'll call this my yellow page. And then I'll do one more copy. So let's edit the background here. We'll remove the background image. I'll upload another image here for the yellow page. Let's go grab the yellow page like this. And you'll notice here I have lightened the colors down below, and I've highlighted this color at the top. So the idea is I'm going to go to a page in my report where all the colors are stylized in that color or that yellowish kind of format. So I'll open this one now, and I now have my new page. And then I'll just do one more. I'll duplicate the page again. I'll remove my background image, upload another image here. Just like this, we'll bring our red one, and then we'll rename our page red. And as a best practice, as I like to build reports, I also like to have a page inside my report that really communicates release notes or change notes or something like that. So I'm going to add just a blank page here at the end, and I'm going to call this my release notes. And then I typically like those pages to be more longer in form. So what I'll do is I'll go to this page, I'll change it to a portrait mode, and then we're going to change, instead of fit to page, we will fit this page to width. And then I also will hide it so this page is hidden. So you don't need to see the release notes, but it will be there. And then just because I'm picky, I like to add a little bit of gray to the background as well, so I know that it's a little bit different. And if I put visuals on it, I can see those as well. And with that, we've taken all the visual designs that we've done with Figma, the frames, building the pretty images or a library of images around the pages, and now we can quickly build this into a report. So I'm going to rename this here. I'm going to call this my sunset report version 1. And then I'll hit save on this because I want to save this for later. Just be aware, a saving feature of your theme files or all the theme elements you're talking about here, a saved feature is a Tips Plus subscription. You can build all these things in the report pages without using a subscription, but we think it's valuable for you to save the content and come back to it later. So that way you're not constantly redoing your work all the time. You can actually come in, do your work, and save it and come back to it later. With that, we're all done. The next part would be well, how do we get it into desktop? How do we now start building things on top of this report? So there are 2 other buttons here. If we want to download just the theme file, you'd use this download button. If you want to download the PBI project or the PBIP file, which this is a Power BI project file, you'd use this preview button here. And it's in preview because the PBIP format is currently in preview right now. You can't technically use it. You can use it. It's just not fully released yet. One more item here I just want to point out is we've done some stylizing on the individual report here, but maybe we want to adjust some colors on the report as well. So if I go into the color palette here, we have the ability for you to randomly grab some colors, or if you have something from a list or a list of colors, I'm just picking some random colors that I think may look well on this report. Just kind of clicking through here until I find something I like. Okay, this is maybe good enough. I'll add all these colors to my library here, and I may rearrange some of my colors as needed. I may not like all of them, so I may just adjust them as required. Maybe that's what I want in my report. Let's get a couple more random colors. Add these guys in here as well. I'll get rid of a couple here. See if I can adjust a couple more that might make sense in my report. This seems a little bit light. Good enough. I've got some colors. So this is going to do all the data colors inside your report. You can also add icons to your report. So this is also part of the theme file elements. You could also add individual icons if needed. And then you can also adjust them to match your color styling of the report as well. So this is my green icon for the account circle. And so those can be used inside your report as needed. And then finally, the best part of this is, well, now we have a card, a donut chart, and some other visuals. We may want to stylize them as well. So if I go over here to our donut chart, we can see that the application will actually render a donut chart in real time and show you all the individual properties of this report. So you may want to style this visualize and change it a little bit here so it meets the style of the rest of the report. So what I'll do here is I actually am going to make the title a little bit larger and center it on the page. And I want to do that on all visuals. So in order to do that, I'll go over here to the global properties, which does not have a visual because it's basically all visuals. I'm going to go down to the section called title. So we'll go down here in the alphabetical list, which is amazing. Microsoft, take note. It's very helpful to have an alphabetical list of all my properties. So here I'll go in here and I'll grab the alignment. I'll put it on the center. There will be no background color. We might make it bold. I'll leave the font family alone. We will make sure that we show the title, and then we're going to adjust the title size to something like 20 or 21. So that's going to bring the title to the center of the visual. Going back over to the donut chart, I can confirm this setting is actually working. So I go back to the donut chart, and there we go. Profit by country now is centered and in the middle of my report chart. So that's a global feature that I've been able to stylize across the entire report. The last option here I'll do is I'll go into my background, and I will make sure that all my background colors of all visuals are turned off because I don't want that off by default. And I think with that, we're good to go. So we'll go back over to our wireframe. We will now download the PBIP project file. So what this will do is it'll bundle up the entire package, the theme, the colors, the icons, the color palette, and all the wireframe and pages, and it will produce to us a single file or bundle of this entire report. So I'm going to extract this report on my desktop. This is the PBIP format. So we see here is my PBIP file. This is what I'll open up in Power BI Desktop. I'll minimize this here, and then we will just open up that folder, and we'll click on the PBIP format. And by clicking on that format, it will then automatically open up desktop. Now, just be aware, this feature is still in preview. So if you have Power BI Desktop and you don't have the latest version, you'll need the most recent version of Power BI Desktop. And in addition to that, you'll need to make sure you turn on that setting as well. And with that, we now have a data set. So we have a report page here. You can see, if I make my report large here, you can see we have our template page where we put all of our visuals on the page, and they're already aligned exactly how we want them. The overview page is already set up. And then we have our yellow page, and you can see over here, our yellow color is highlighted at the top, and every other page color down here below is already a little bit more transparent or muted a bit. And then all the visuals are exactly where they want to be. We have our red page, and we also have our release notes. And you'll notice here, if I put a visual on the page, the visual is quite large here. And if I move this around a little bit, you can see that's my text box, and you can see that there's no background. So we already set that color globally. And so if I wanted to put the background back on, I go to style and color, and I would turn my background on. So that's the background color, and I could change the transparency of that as well to whatever I wanted. And then you could type your text here. But notice this is a scrollable page now. So in the themes.PowerBI.tips, we actually made the page and said, size this page to fit the width of my browser. So that way, if I take a lot of notes, I'll have a long page. And it's just a scrollable list of information. So again, we're now able to not only just create theming files, but we're creating an entire wireframe, a project that we could download and reuse over and over again. All right, with that being said, we will go back over here to our overview. The last thing we would do here to actually build our wireframe, we probably wouldn't save this because we want to keep this for later. This is now our example file. And then when we're ready, we could actually go in and directly go log in and go grab data from our servers. So I'm going to log into my Power BI tenant. Once I'm signed in here, it will then bring me directly into my Power BI tenant, and I can go to my OneLake data hub. I'm going to go grab some data from my star data model. And with that, I'm connecting to a data set in the service. And just like that, I've got my whole data model at my exposure here. And I can start building things individually, and I can start dragging and dropping all of my different data fields right onto my report. So the sum of cost of goods, I can just drop it on my card. It will then automatically render the data on the cards as I need them. And if I don't like what I've built here and I want to adjust things, I can always adjust them here locally, or I can go back into my PBIP project file in PowerBI.tips, and we can continue to stylize and adjust additional properties in the report. So a lot of times I'll get a handful of properties I care about. I'll keep stylizing, keep saving them to my report, and then I update things. That way, every time I use the report, it's just literally drag and drop data fields or visual elements here. So we'll grab our sum of profit on our bubble chart, and we will add, see if we can add some other country and products, and add other data fields to this as well. And it will then start producing to me data on various charts. So we can just go ahead and add our data fields as needed. We'll add our products here. There we go. Now we're building reports instead of worrying about stylizing and customizing them as well. With that, that's a quick run around here of a portion of Figma and a portion of actually building the wireframe portion of this. There's a lot of content around this. There's a lot of techniques Steve and I have learned over the years. So it might make sense to do a couple more of these. Any other thoughts, Steve, as we kind of wrap up here?
Awesome. I think this is great. And throughout these 3 sessions, we saw how we start with meetings, just kicking off, really getting that design flow, understanding our audience, going through the data, all the way to this, to actually building it really, really quickly, really reusable. And the idea is we can come back and change colors, so we can very quickly do everything in a much more efficient way.
Yeah, everything we built here is all fully, this is full desktop. So anything you change here, you can go ahead and change them as needed. You can change titles, you can turn things on and off. All the stylizing and coloring options are already here by default. You just have the ability to change them very quickly inside the tools here. So if you wanted to change things to white, you can also adjust things here as well as you continue to, let's change the category label here and make that a color of white as well. So then we can then paste these options across different visuals. So we can then, format things as needed. But I would recommend, if you're going to make major changes, I'd recommend going back to your theme file and figuring out where those changes are. Spend a little bit of time working with the visuals directly and making sure you get the stylized properties the way you need them. That way, when you come to the report, it's automatically ready, set up, and ready to go. So the goal here is you're kind of playing a game between building the right styled features in the wireframing. That way, now that you have an appropriately built report, it's easy to drag and drop materials right into it. With that, I think we've done a full good demo here. There's plenty more to learn in this space. We think this is a workflow that is very best served for your design team or graphic designers. One thing that we find a lot of times when we work with clients, particularly around building reports and things, is there's always this question around what is the art of the possible. So we feel like giving them a tool like the theme generator, letting them see what are the settings, what are the properties that you can adjust to stylize individual report objects, themes, visuals, and playing with the build of the report without actually requiring data. We can offload this work to somebody else. We can have someone working on the data model. We can have someone working on the thin report design, and we can have someone working as a business analyst figuring out what kinds of visuals we actually need in our report. So with this, we have, I think, more workloads we can then give to our team and divide the work and conquer it much easier across our teams. With that, we'll say thank you very much. We appreciate your time today. Will be more to come. I think we'll have more demos of this. This is really good stuff. And we'll catch you next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much and speak soon.